Okay, باش نبداو بالexample. We will start with this example, which, as I said, we want to create an application that renders. So we have a index.js file that contains our component, which is the file that will render our application, and the output we want to get is something like this: 0, 0, 15, 20. Oh, okay. 0, 0, 15, 20. 15 minutes and 20 seconds. We want to create a timer that will increment automatically every 1 second. Okay? So after 1 second, this will be 21, then 23, and then once this reaches 59. Once this reaches 59, it becomes 16 minutes and 0 seconds, as you might expect. At first sight, you would think that the data or the variable that holds the value of this time that, let's call it let time equal, you would think it is made of 3 separate values or 3 separate properties. For example, like this: hours 0, minutes 16, and seconds 0, which is logical. The problem is, if you represent the time as 3 separate values, or three separate variables, or 3 separate properties of an object, it will be much harder to manipulate later on. What does that mean? That means that if I want to increment the time represented as an object made of 3 properties: hours, minutes, and seconds, I would have, for example, I want to increment. I have like 16 minutes and 0 seconds. What's the next after 1 second? What should it be? 16 minutes and 1 second. So if I try to make a function that increments a given time, let's call it increment. Let's create the function here. Let's say function increment time, and it takes an object that represents time, or let's call it time object. Time object, and we want to increment. So we know that this time object has 3 properties: hours, minutes, and seconds. Okay, so what we need to do is, if seconds equals 59, we have to do 2 things. First of all, we need, of course, time object 1 second dot seconds equals 59. So we have reached the last second in that minute. We have to do 2 things. First of all, we increment the minutes dot minutes plus plus, increment the minutes, and the seconds have to go back to 0. Logic ولا؟ Now that I incremented the seconds, I go to the minutes. If time object dot minutes equals 59, equals 60, equals 60. This shouldn't happen. So if we have reached the 60th minute, we have to increment the hour. Time object dot hours plus plus, and time object dot minutes is 0. Okay, so this is our function. If you do it otherwise, some examples I have seen. Oh yeah, yes, yeah. So as you can see, the logic here is a little bit too complex to make it right from the first time. So I forgot to increment the seconds. So what I should be doing is time object does seconds. Huh? لا هو مادام يحب ينكريمونت
ما تحاولش تعملها مرتين وقت
تنقل تولي لنا تولي 60
الارث نتاع الاي فوالا هكاك
time object dot seconds plus plus. I increment the seconds if I reach the last second, which is 60 seconds, which shouldn't be reached. I increment the minutes. If I have reached the last minute, which is the 60th second, I increment the hours and reset the minutes back to 0. Logic. Which is a little bit too hard to reason about at the first from the first time. No, ما عنديش حق نكتب لهم. So let's test it. This is a pure function. A pure function means that it only uses the input values or the parameters it gets to calculate a new value. It doesn't use global variables. It doesn't communicate to any server. It does not do anything. It just calculates a value from a given set of values. In this example, I give it a time object. It gives me back a new time object. So to test this function, all you have to do is call it. So console.log increment. Huh? لا استنى بس لا console.log increment, and I can pass it here a time object. For example, I can create an object right now, increment time, and pass it a time object. As we said, a time object has these three properties: hours, minutes, and seconds. So I have hours 0, 16, 0. So what we should get in the console is 0, 16, 1. Control S. they could send. Okay. No. We're running code sandbox, so I can just type here in the console, my console. So I have the function. I copied the function, and I can test it right now. I forgot the return. Yes, that's true. Okay, so the thing with our function is I forgot to return the time object that I have created. So I need to return it. Return time object, right? Once I have made the transformations that I have to make, I have to return the time object, the new time object, to be output to the console. Okay, let's get back to the console, and what we have right now is this. So this is our function, and I can call it. I can call it with increment title hours 0, minutes 16, seconds 0. This should get me hours 0, minutes 16, seconds 1. I can test it again. If I pass 59, as you can see, it gives me back 17 minutes and 0 seconds. If I
24,
we don't have anything bigger than hours, so if we have like 50 hours, we write 50 hours. If I give it like where's the other example, 59 minutes and 59 and 0 seconds, it should give me 59 minutes and 1 second. As you can see, if I give it 59 minutes and 59 seconds, it should give me 1 hour, which is the case. Okay, this is good. It's not bad. Like once you think about it and you start from the first the seconds, and then move to the minutes, and then return the time object, it should be easy. But not everyone would think about it this way. Maybe some of you would start by trying to increment the hours, and then incrementing the minutes, and then incrementing the seconds, which would make it a lot harder. So my point is, what if, although the time is represented as 3 different variables to the user, what if we consider it to be a single variable represented by seconds? That means that our time is just one number. For example, 3,650 seconds. And now the increment time has only to take number of seconds, and all we have to do is return seconds plus 1. But then we have to transform the time, the number of seconds, to be output to the user. Okay. So I'll just continue like the React. I'll create the React component to display our time here. Just syntax for like creating an HTML tag. I will create kind of my own HTML tag to render or to view my own data. In this case, to view a number of seconds. So I'll create class app extends. This is just like syntax. Don't ركز معاه. Whatever that means. نجي. Render. Okay. And here we have hello. We don't need this. So what we have created is an element, an HTML element that is named called app. Let's just give it a new name, for example, timer. Timer. And this element will only output this HTML. Okay, makes sense. So a component in React is a function that returns HTML. So what we want to do, we want the number of seconds, or our data, which is the number of seconds, to be saved in the component. So we want our component to remember how many seconds he has in his count. To do that, we need to create another thing that is relevant to React, which is called a state. So another set of syntax that you don't need to focus on. Constructor props, super props, this point state, and here we put the initial value of our time. For example, our initial time is 0 seconds, as you might expect. And what else you want to do? We want to increment the time every 1 second. To do that, the JavaScript function that we all know that allows us to execute time on a regular basis after every 1 second, for example, is set interval. Yeah, set interval.
مش nice props.
It's just syntax. So constructor props, super props, we don't need it now, but it's just syntax you always use to initialize the component. We don't need props right now. All we need is state. The state is basically the data that the component, in our case the timer, needs to remember, to hold, to put in memory. Our state is just a number, so the component only needs to remember a single number, which is a number of seconds that elapsed since its execution. كيف set interval. So after every 1 second, which is 1000 milliseconds, I want to change my state. So there is a predefined method in React to change the state of a component, to change the value that the component is remembering or is holding. It's called this.setState. And what we want to do, we want, it's not an object. We want to put the old state, which is this.state, plus 1.
Donc state en fait c'est listener. تحط في listener على l'objet مش كيتبدل هو وحده يبدل.
This dot set state is a function that you call to tell React that, hey, I want to update the data that this component is using. So you do your own thing and update everywhere the view.
Voilà, donc كل listener عدوها مش كتبدل.
Yeah, kind of. Okay, let's put it in an object. Seconds is 0. So we have our state now is an object with one property that is called seconds. So what we want to do is we want to change our state. And what exactly do you want to change? We want to change the seconds property of it to be this.state.seconds, whatever our seconds were. For example, I had 0. Now I want it to become 0 plus 1, which is 1.
No,
Hey.
This point state.
Set state seconds. This dot state dot second. This dot set state takes an object that describes the update that I want to use. So this is all syntax. This is not what I'm trying to focus on. لحظة من هنا. There is a slight problem here. We have set state takes an object of state variables to update our function, which returns an object of state variables. That's exactly what I did. Control S, refresh. Okay, I think it works. Now, there is data in the component, but we're not showing it to the screen yet. To show our number of seconds to the screen, all we need to do is in the HTML that we're returning, put a pair of curly brackets and write the whatever variable we want to output. The variable that you want to output is this dot state dot seconds. As you can see, we have the number of seconds growing in the view right here. Let me put it in a H1 to be a little bit bigger. As you can see, the number of seconds. So what I'm the component here is returns an HTML. This HTML is basically an H1 tag. Inside the H1 tag, I want to display the value of a variable that is called this dot state dot seconds. That variable, initially its value is 0, and every after every 1000 milliseconds, after every 1 second, I want to increment this dot state dot seconds with 1. Make sense? Now the only thing we have to do is to output it properly. So what we have to do is just create a function that takes a number of seconds and gets me back a number of 3 numbers: number of hours, number of minutes, and the number of seconds. So the function, let's call it seconds. What does it do, the function? It takes a seconds, it returns me back a time object. So what I set new date. ما تخدمش بالسكوندات. ديت تعطيها دات حقيقيه 15 جويلية 2018 تقول لك هي بعد نهار فما ولا قبل. صعيبه تولي هكاك. So our function, what does it do? I will give it a number of seconds, 90 seconds. عندك كاش ولا؟
كنت تصبيحات خير.
كنت يعني قبل. We will write a function that I give it. Functions. So the thing here is that functions are just transformers of data. I give it data or information in a given shape. It gives me back a new data in a different shape. In this example, I give it a number. It gives me back 3 numbers, representing how many hours, how many minutes, and how many seconds that number that I gave it has. So what I will call it, as you might expect, seconds to time, or maybe convert seconds to time. It's not a problem. Always try to name your functions according to what actions they do or to what transformations they apply to the data you give them. They. Okay. Seconds to time. So what does it take? It takes a number of seconds, which is a number. Okay. And now what we need to return? We need to return 3 different values. We either return them in a array, for example, like 1 hour, 50 minutes, 20 seconds, or we return it in an object like this: hours 1, minutes 5, seconds 9. This is better. There is nothing better. Both of them are valid choices, with advantages and disadvantages. For example, the advantage of this approach is that I don't have to write hours first and then minutes and then seconds. I could just write it like this.
En fait هنا فما sens فما المينينغ تحط objet ولا عندها sens. No, c'est pas l'important.
Okay, we will do it like this. If you want to try something else, try it at your own risk. So what we want to do is to take the number of seconds, convert it to a number of seconds, minutes, and hours. So I will create the three values before I return them for const. Let's call this total seconds. This one I call seconds, which is total seconds mod 60. If I take the number, I divide it by 60, the rest of the division is the number of seconds that I need to output. Const minutes equals total seconds div 60, but the problem with division is it returns a decimal number with the virgule. So what I want to do is mat.floor to remove the virgule. Oui. ها
عليه مود 60 هيك عطيت الريبونس
مود معناها ما باغي تسمع على 60 ما متصل
عطيت الريبونس في الكيستيون عطيت الريبونس في الكيستيون.
Okay, let's bring the console, our beloved console, and try things. Let's try things. Okay, for example, 70 mod 60 is 10. Does it make sense?
لا
70 slash like divided by 60 is 1. So that's why we have to like remove the virgule and put mat.floor. 1 minute and 10 seconds. Okay? It's okay, it's just all math. You can like test it and remember it. It's not that big of a deal. Or you use Google to tell you the formula. Okay, now we have the number of seconds, we have the number of minutes, and we need the number of hours. Const hours equals mat.floor total seconds sur 3600. Every hour has 3600 seconds. المينيت ترى مش المينيتات الكل، المينيت هو كل شنو اللي فيش في مش بيش يوصل 69. That's the thing. استنى. Let's say we have 3680 seconds. This is like put it in a const total seconds. Total seconds. Okay, total seconds has 1 hour. So total seconds, if we divide it by 3600, and of course we have 1.00, we remove the decimal points, math.floor, and we get 1 hour. That's correct. We can try something else like 10,000 seconds. It will give us 2 hours. That's correct, isn't it? Yeah. So then we move to like test the other thing. Number of seconds. How many seconds does the 3680 seconds have? Not how many total seconds, how many
to show
seconds to show to the user.
20.
So we have like mod 60 and we have 20. Okay. How many number of minutes to show to the user is 3 divided by 60 math.floor. This is all math. This is nothing. There is nothing to like teach you about here. It's just math. It's not like formulas. شنو هو؟ 61 3660 61 minutes. 61. Yeah.
مود 60.
مود 60 اي مود 60.
لا مش حد يعرف. هاي هكيك.
Okay. We have found a bug and we fixed it. Mod 60. Or if we want to be fancy about it, we can like do the opposite thing. Start from the hours. Const hours equals math dot floor of total seconds mod 3 and then we take the total seconds and نحيو منه number of hours and remove the number of hours minus equals hours times the 3 so and whatever, like we go the opposite direction. That's not what we're aiming for here. Just like do it, like whatever formula works. Now our function that converts seconds to time to show to the user should be working. So we return a new object with 3 properties: seconds with value seconds, minutes with value minutes, hours with value hours. The thing with JavaScript, if you have a property name is equal to the property value, you don't have to write seconds colon seconds. You can just write seconds, which means seconds colon seconds. And the same for minutes, same for hours. Now the only thing we need to do here is instead of showing this dot state dot seconds, we can just show this dot state dot seconds. First of all, we need to bring the new value, which is like const time object, for example, equals seconds to time of this dot state dot seconds. Now we have an object with 3 properties to show. Time object has 3 properties. The first property is time object dot hours. And then we put a colon, and then time object dot minutes, and then we put a colon and time object dot seconds. We could wait for it to go to 5, but another thing we can do is instead of initializing it with 0, we can initialize it with 55 seconds and see what happens. Wow. The only thing that's missing now is we need to format our data further. The data that is shown in the example, there is 0, 0 here, 0, 1 here, and like double digits always. So all we have to do is create a new function. Let's call it
فماش دي تايب ولا حاجه هكا
ثم حاجه حاضر ما نحبش نستعملها اسمها pad start, or we can use there is already a predefined function that is called pad start. It takes a string. Let's test it here. Hang on. F12. Okay. There is a default function that is called anyString.padStart. For example, we give it the number 5, and you could tell it to I want to put the number 5 in 2 digits. So padStart 2 0 ظهر لي هكا. That means until you reach the length of 2, fill the string with zeros, and it gives you 0 5. padStart 5 0, it will fill it with 4 zeros and 5. padStart 5 dot, 4 dots and 5. 55 like FV padStart 5 period, 3 dots and then FV. You get the idea?
Yep.
Really? Okay. So what we need to do is, this is a number, so we need to transform it into a string. String time object hours dot pad start 2 0. Okay. Same thing here. We're repeating ourselves here. We're repeating the same code. That's why I'll be refactoring it later. String of time object dot minutes. I take the minutes of the time object that we got from the transforming function. I pass it to a string to make it a string, and then I call the function padStart on it with the first parameter 2. I mean that means I want the length to become 2, and with zeros to pad with. Yeah, it works. 12 to string won't work like this in the console, because the dot here is like misinterpreted. But if you just put space here, it works, or space here, it works. Oh, here it doesn't work, but here it works. But usually you don't have a number that you want to transform into string. You have like x equals 12, and then you do x dot to string, which will work. So again, a string of times object dot seconds. We take the number of seconds, we string it, and then we can start it with 2 and 0 again. And as you can see, our work is done here. The last thing that I want to show you, to tell you about, is all of this is like repetitive code. We can extract, we can put it in a global function that is called, for example, format data. Because the data we have, as I said, the data in itself is just number of seconds. But the data as it needs to be output to the user is a totally different, in a totally different format. So to transform the data from its value that is stored in the component or in the application or whatever, the seconds in this case, to the format that needs to be shown to the user, that is called formatting the data. So we can just create a new function called format time. We give it a number of seconds, and it gives me back all of this. Of course, not like this. I will rewrite it. So format time, I give it a number of seconds, the data as it is represented in my application, and what it would do, it will take the number of seconds, pass it to the function seconds to time. So let's call this total seconds, and then const time object equals time seconds to time of total seconds, const, and then return this, which is not a string. That's why I should transform it into a string. Plus, let's just put plus for the moment. Plus string time object equals. I always forget the equals sign. Const. Huh? Okay. Now it will start work unless there is a little bit of fixing yet to do. Okay. Now this function has only one job to do. Take number of seconds, transform it to format that the user can understand. That's all it does. And it's a pure function. It doesn't use the global variables. It doesn't need to communicate to any server. It doesn't need to call any global, change any global variable or something. So this is easy to reason about and an easy to test function. What does it mean easy to test? That means I can just copy it, open the console, and paste it here and start testing it. Format time of 3600 seconds is seconds to time is not defined because why? It uses another function called seconds to time that I need to copy. So I copy the other function, and now I can test my function. Format time 3600 is this. I forgot to put the semicolons. We will put it later. So it's like 1 hour, 0 minutes, 0 seconds. If I add 60 more seconds, 60 more seconds, should give me 1 hour, 1 minute, 0 seconds. If I give it like 65 or 64, it should give me 4. So it basically I'm testing it and it works.
حاجة اسمها تايب بينتينج، يعني تجي قدام اتريبيو توتال سيكونds تقول راهو لازم يكون دو تيب بونتي.
تايب سكريبت نجم، جافا سكريبت لا. So what I need to fix is to add. You need to put the columns in here, and the plus sign in here, and the plus sign in here, and save it. Okay. Now, if I copy it again and try to test it again, my God, format time has already been declared. I open a new window. I copy both my functions because I need them both. I copy here, paste here. I have the function seconds to time that takes a number of seconds, transform it into an object that has seconds, time, and minutes and hours, and another function that has the role of formatting the data to be shown to the user. I can now test them. Format time of 3600 is 1 minute, 1 hour, and 1 minute, and 5 here, 5 here, as you can see, like 69 here, and it works perfectly. All we need to do now is call instead of whatever used to be here, all we need to do is call our function, which is I don't even need this one. So I call my function that is called format time. I pass the time that I have, which is this.state.seconds, and we're done. And now, thanks to the use of functions that only do one thing and that are meant to convert data and nothing more, I can my component is really easy to reason about. All it needs to do is, like, I have a number of seconds that I increment every 1 second, and once I increment that number, I pass it to the function that formats it, however it does it. Once I format the time, I show it to the user. It's really easy to read and really easy to reason about. That's it. So the whole point is, all you need to do is think about your application or whatever project you have as a data transformation process. You have data as input from the user or from a server or from whatever. You pass it to a bunch of functions to transform it and to apply modifications to it and whatever, and maybe transformations to show it to the user, or maybe to update it, or maybe to delete it, or maybe to something else. And you'll have like your solution manifest in a very easy way. That's it. Thank you very much. Any questions?